Hello, good evening. Welcome back after the weekend. Some students are getting agitated for starting late today. Thank you so much for this much love. Good evening, good evening. I hope you enjoyed your weekend and you're all doing good. I'm good too, thank you. Just finished the previous class a bit late today, so that is why I got late to start this one, but that's okay. Thank you, Ashina. My weekend was also good. That's okay, Nusrat, no problem. Yeah, so those who were in 5 to 7 class, they know we got a bit late today there, and that's why we are late here today. So never mind, now we have the test in front of us and the first question in front of you. Start solving, 2.5 minutes, post your answers, and we will start the discussion. All right, are we done? Very good. Good response. We don't say engaged for volcanoes. At times you have to select your answers based on your general understanding of what are the words that we use in this particular context. So for volcanoes, we say active and inactive volcanoes. Is it fine, Milan? So we say active volcanoes for those which erupt very frequently, and inactive volcanoes for those which have been quiet actually for a period of time, that they don't erupt frequently. So that's the terms, those are the terms that we use. So in this question, the correct answers. So we have name of a volcano, Mount. I'll have to bit of. Sorry. Okay. So we have here Mount Vesuvius, a volcano located at the ancient Italian cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. So we have two things. So located, it will be between, because we have two places. So it is located between the ancient cities of this place and that place. And then this, we'll now not read this part because that will confuse us. So Mount A, let's say, has received much attention because of its frequent and destructive eruptions. The most famous of these eruptions occurred in this time. The volcano had been dashed for centuries. So now they're explaining that most destructive eruption that happened. How do we come to know? Because of the tense that they had used, the volcano had been, because it means that everything that happened happened in the past and it has finished, that incident has finished. The volcano had been dashed for centuries. So as I said, what is the language we use for volcanoes? Inactive means it was quiet. It was not erupting for centuries at that time. There was little warning of the coming eruption. Although one account unearthed by archaeologists says that a hard rain and a strong wind dashed the celestial calm during the preceding night. So these two things, hard rain and a strong wind, dashed the celestial calm. So what did they do? Now, as I said, this is a past story which had happened. So we have to select the answer just based on tense. Was disturbing will come when the whole story is going on past continuous form. So they would have said the volcano was inactive, or let's say was not erupting for centuries, then we will say was disturbing if they will use was an ing, but they used had been. What we have here is has disturbed. Has is used when we want to use present tense. Was being disturbed is passive voice, which we don't need. We just don't need was in any way, active or passive. So we need had. So these two things, a hard rain and a strong wind, these two things had disturbed the celestial calm during the preceding night, and early the next morning, the volcano poured a huge river of molten rock down upon Herculaneum. That's the name of the place, completely burying the city and filling the harbor with lava. Dash on the other side of the mountain, cinders, stone, and ash rained down on the other side of the other city that was mentioned in the first sentence. So what will be the answer here? Meantime, also, meanwhile, and hence. Hence is used when you're concluding something, and that conclusion refers to something in the future, but here it's not. It's the same time that two things are happening. It's one side of the mountain and the other side of the mountain. So when two things happen at the same time, what connector do we use is meanwhile. Meantime is used when you want to say for now. For example, we sometimes we say to students, okay, till the time, meantime, in the meantime, you complete two questions. So in the meantime means for now, you complete this, and then I'll come back and tell you what to do again, what to do next. So meantime means for now, but we are not saying for now. Meanwhile means when something was happening on the one side, on the other side at the same time, this thing was happening. So that is meanwhile. On the other side of the mountain, these things happened. Large portions of the city were destroyed in the conflagration. Fire was not the only cause of dash. So what was happening there was destruction, because the language they used disruptive eruptions in the first one as well. And the last one also, they said these heavy gases were not buoyant in the atmosphere and therefore sank towards the earth and suffocated people. So when the whole city will be buried in the lava, there would be a lot of destruction happening. So that is why we'll use that fire was not the only cause of destruction, not problems or loss or damage, but destruction would be the right word because it's taking the whole city into it. All right. The first one was between, because we have two names of cities. Second one is inactive, because that is the language we use for volcanoes. Active volcanoes and inactive volcanoes are two types of volcanoes. What is the meaning of idle? Otherwise, idle means when you're sitting free. We cannot say free volcano. Shiftless, not having any shift. Volcanoes don't do shifts like us. Engaged or inengaged, again, is not the word that we use for volcanoes. Engaged is you're busy in doing something. So that doesn't go for volcano. Third one, we need had, because we are describing a story which happened in the past and it has finished. They started the story with had, gave us a hint that this is a story of the past and that story has finished. So we cannot use ing in that sense. Meanwhile is used when two things are happening at the same time in two different places, or here two different sides of the mountain. And the last one is destruction, because of the language of the context that this has been frequent and destructive eruptions. And then we're explaining one of those. So obviously we'll explain how much destruction it made in that event, right? Anything else again after the second explanation? So Bhavin, had is also past tense. Was would be the past tense when you are saying something in the recent past. Had is when it is a long time back, when you're telling a story which has finished. Not is now that you are saying it was happening. No, it just happened at that time. Also, Chandrika doesn't make sense, because also this happened, also this happened. That has nothing to do with these two things happened at the same time. But here what they wanted to say was at two sides of the mountain at the same time these two things were happening, or these two things happened. So that is why it should be meanwhile. Bhavin, it's not that they will give us was in that particular sentence. It is up to us that we have to understand the context, that what time is the story going on. So you have to understand the time of the story and select accordingly. They won't actually give us was in sentence if we have to use was. So was being disturbed, Ashok, is the passive voice of was disturbing only. If we don't want to say ing, we cannot put being as well, because that mean the same. It's just active and passive way of writing it. Was being disturbed also means you want to say it was something was disturbing at that time, but we are not. See, the difference is when we say it was happening, so you will explain the story in continuous tense, past tense. This was happening, this person was coming, then I was going, and then I was telling this. So this is a scenario explanation. When you said I went, he came, and I talked this. So understand there's a difference in the whole of the explanation. So you have to understand what is the context. Is the context in ing form? Are you describing a chronological order in a continuous tense or not? Which here was not the case. They just said there were so many destructive eruptions and one of them happened like this. So you don't say one of them was happening like this. No, it happened because it has finished happening, right? Meantime is used when you want to say for now. All good with this one now? Has is present tense. Ashok, like we say, he has done the work. That means presently he has completed the work. That is has. All right, question number 2, take 2.5 minutes for this. Yes, post your answers. Okay, let's look at this. Nature writing is non-fiction or fiction prose or poetry about the natural environment. So this tells us that what is the topic. We are going to talk about nature writing, and what is it? It's just like fiction or non-fiction poetry. So you don't really need to understand what is prose, just understand it is just a form of writing. Let's say we're writing poems is nature writing. Okay, now stop writing and listen to the discussion. Nature writing dash a wide variety of works ranging from those that place primary emphasis on natural history facts to those in which philosophical interpretation predominate. So what is nature writing is just a type of writing poems, let's say. And what they are explaining is a concept that what is nature writing. So what nature writing is same today, was same yesterday, it's going to remain same the next day in the future as well. So means the answers should not be based on tenses. That should be the first thing you should understand. We are describing a fact here. So nature writing dash a wide variety of works. The options we have: present tense, past tense. Now, as I said, we are not based on tense. If we'll say it consisted, means it used to consist in the past, and now it does not consist that thing. So we cannot go in past tense because we are explaining. We are not saying what was the case or what will be the case. Contain cannot come because nature writing is singular, so we cannot have a verb without s. So two words got eliminated based on general grammar thing. Now, encompasses means to include in it, and create is just like creating something. So nature writing cannot create. It is not a human being. It cannot work. We cannot give nature writing a verb to do something. So nature writing cannot create in it by itself something. We can say that humans use nature writing to create poems on, then it makes sense. So what are we left with? It encompasses, and the meaning of encompasses can be easily understood that includes. What is included in nature writing? Nature writing includes a wide variety of works ranging from this to this. It includes natural history, essays, poetry, and this and this and that. Nature writing often dash heavily on scientific information. So we can eliminate the ly options to simplify the sentence. Nature writing dash on scientific information. So can we say focused? Now again, we are not going to select the answers in past tense because again, it is a fact being discussed. So it's not about what was the case. Now with relates, the preposition that we use is relates to something. With associates, the preposition that we use is associate with something. And with draws, the preposition that we use is draws on different things. And what is the preposition we have here is on. So the answer will be draws on. Nature writing draws on scientific information and facts about the natural world. At the same time, it is written in the first person. So the sentence is complete without the blank. That tells us that we need an adverb because written is a verb. It is written in the first person. So how it is written? Regularly, repeated. So we don't need ed, we need ly. Frequently written or routinely written. So routinely is not an academic language. Frequently written means the frequency of writing, and regularly means every single day. So we are not talking about regular means every single day. We are talking about the concept that frequently means more often of the times. It is written in first person. It's not about everyday writing. So most frequently, it is written in the first person and incorporates personal observations of and philosophical reflections dash nature. So with reflections, we always use the preposition upon. Like you must, if you're going to universities, you must get those assignments saying that in this assignment, you have to reflect upon your personal interpretation of this subject. So reflect upon is kind of a collocation. So upon is the preposition that you use with the word reflect or reflections. Modern nature writing traces its dash to the works of natural history. So whenever we talk about the word traces, we always are trying to say the past, that where did something originate from. So we are talking about its origin or about its history or its roots. So what do we have here is modern nature writing traces its roots to the works of natural history. So we cannot say traces its basic or traces its senses. Non-living things cannot have senses, and traces its foundation. It was not something which was laid. So foundation is of buildings or something like that. So this way of writing has its roots in the second half of the 18th century and throughout the 19th, right? The first one is encompasses, which means what is included in it. Nature writing includes these things. Then nature writing often draws on, because out of the options, there's only one option that can go with preposition on. Third, we needed ly. So we generally want to say that more of the times or most of the times it is written in first person. So we'll say frequently means oftenly it is written in first person. With reflection, the preposition is always upon, no doubt to that. And we are tracing its roots means its origin. It is from the second half of the 18th or the 19th century. Now ask your questions if you have any. The first one, you have to eliminate consisted because you're talking about a fact, and fact or the definitions are always in present tense. So consisted is eliminated. Contain cannot come because you need s, your noun is singular. Creates cannot go with nature writing because nature writing cannot create anything on its own. Create is a verb which is used for living things, or you can say human beings use nature writing to create poems on so and so. Otherwise, nature writing cannot create by itself. So what are we left with is encompasses, and the meaning of encompasses is just like includes. All right. Anybody else with any doubt in this question? All good. Okay. Frequently, because repeated is eliminated, we need something with ly, Mariam. Routinely and regularly means you do it on everyday basis. But we are just saying that how is nature writing written? So we say frequently means most of the times we use first pronoun or first person means we use I and we when we write in nature writing. So it's not on like we use everyday I and we. It's about that generally when we use nature writing, we write it in first person. So it's frequently means most of the times. No, Riddhi, there's no rule often with past form. It depends upon the sentence. Like here, we are not using past form. We are using present tense. What was it? Draws on. So it is not any rule. Often doesn't make a difference. It has to be what are the other tenses in the sentence that will decide your tense. All right, question number 3. 2.5 minutes, post your answers. Done. Okay, let's look at the answers. So this says the continued growth of world population is putting increased dash on natural resources. This could be done based on understanding. Also, we say that the population is putting a lot of pressure on natural resources. But otherwise, population cannot force natural resources or is putting increased compulsion is to make something compulsory, and is putting increased necessity. So we cannot put a necessity on something. We can put pressure on something, like the population is putting a pressure on the natural resources. This has led to soil erosion, deforestation, and contamination of seawater with agricultural runoff. These problems are exacerbated by globalization as countries become even more dash on one another for resources. So countries become more dash on one another. So what are countries becoming? Conditional, dependent, reliable, or incapable. So this says countries are becoming more dependent, particularly for food. So they said for resources. So they are becoming dependent on each other for resources like food. There are many advantages that dash from globalization. So this was kind of a collocation. We say the word result from. Result from means something which is as a consequence of, or which can say comes out of. So then we say as a result from. There are many advantages that result from. It won't be that happen or occur. So for see grammatically also, advantages means you have to have a verb without s. So happen, can come, occurs, cannot come based on grammar also. And existed, we are not in past tense. We are explaining the situation which is current we are facing. So existed cannot come. And advantages do not happen. So happen won't be the right word, because we cannot say these advantages happen to me. No. So these advantages are result of, and that is why we say there are many advantages that result from globalization. Result from is a collocation. A dash of new technologies and industries have been made possible. So it's plural. So many technologies and industries have been made possible by the interconnectivity created by globalization. So a dash of. So what can be? With a, we cannot put array because we need and for that. A scope of new technologies have been possible. If something is possible, well, how can we say it is still a scope? A range of or a degree of. So degree of is how much, then we use the word degree. So degree won't come here because we are not answering how much. So we say a range of means simply say many of new technologies. So a range of means a lot of. Many of or a range of new technologies and industries have been made possible by the interconnectivity created by globalization, allowing for faster communication and the sharing technology across the world. Dash this other problems that result from. Now see, this was the language that they had used there, and they use it again for you. Dash this other problems that result from globalization also need to be taken into account. So we'll say despite this, because for instead we need instead of this. After this, we are not talking about any chronological order. And for apart, we have to say apart from this. You cannot simply say apart this. That is why the answer is despite this. So reliable cannot be the answer because the context is not talking about trust on each other. The context is talking about globalization, which means connecting with each other, taking help from each other, depending on each other. So globalization is international foreign trade, basically, that whatever you don't have in your country, you can get it from the other country. So that is the dependency. It's not about you have trust or not. Reliability is when you are talking about trust on something. All right, any other questions in this one? Despite can be used without of as well, Chandrika. So we use despite without of also. Fourth one is a range of, because we want to say a lot of. So for a lot of, we don't have any other option. For array, we'd have to have an. A scope of, scope is not, because they already said have been made possible. So scope is for something which is not yet made, and we hope that that thing when can be made, that is the scope. And degree is the answer to how much. So we are not saying how much of the technologies, we are saying how many of the technologies. So fifth one is despite this, because for all other options, we need something like with instead, we have to say instead of this. After this, we are not talking in any chronological order. 1, 2, 3, 4 is not there. And for apart, we need to say apart from this. All right. No worries. And here you have your question number 4. Kashif, after will come when you're talking about first this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen. So we are not talking about any chronological order. So how can we say after this? After means the previous thing should be before this and then after this. That's for chronological sense. Yes, like I'll say after this, do question number 5. So that means first do this and then do that. Okay, so you have 2.5 minutes for this question number 4. Yes, post your answers. Very good. Chandrika, what tense are we in? Selecting your answers without looking for the tense is the biggest mistake you can do in the exam. Okay, let's look at the answers for this one. The Highlanders still followed the clan system, which dashed in place for hundreds of years. Now, this thing we have discussed a number of times, those who haven't noted it down. Whenever we talk about something which started in the past and it continued all the years and is still followed or still in the same way, we use perfect tense for that thing, has, have, or had, based on whatever the context is. So when something started hundreds of years ago and we still follow it, it will be perfect tense always to show that thing. So here the perfect tense is had been, means starting from that time. Had been means continued after that till a period of time, not in the present tense, but till a period of time. The Highlanders still followed the clan system, which had been in place for hundreds of years. The clan was ruled by one family from dash its chief was drawn. So it was ruled by one family from whom cannot come, because we are not talking about one human being, it's family at the end from which we have to continue. That will not come because we have used a comma, and that comes if you will not put a comma. So it will be from which. So which here represents the family. So the clan was ruled by one family from which means from this family its chief was drawn. The kinsfolk and others who dashed the clan lived together. So this is a whole story going on in the past tense. So the kinsfolk and others who form is present tense. So we don't need present tense. First of all, we need past tense. So it will be who completed the clan, prepared the clan, or made up the clan. Now, what is the clan? It is some kind of system, right? So they say the kinsfolk and others who dashed the clan lived together. So it will be made up. We are not talking about who started or who finished or who completed. So that is why it's not completed. Out of prepared and made up, prepared is used when you are talking about assembling something to be used in the future. So when you are doing something which will be used as in a different way in the future, that is preparation. For example, I'm preparing food. So preparing will include a lot of raw materials, and at the end it will come out a different dish. Then it will be used. So preparing is used in that context when you have a lot of raw materials, and in the future it's going to turn up something. But made up is generally used, you're making something. So it will be who made up the clan lived together in agricultural townships that functioned like collectors or joint tenancy farms. The land was controlled by the chief but leased from him by taxmen who rented it to tenant farmers, who in turn employed quarters to help cultivate it. Tinged with feudal influences, the clan was also very much a martial system, grounded on the dash of its fighting men to provide military service for the chief. Now this, what is this? Provide military service for the chief. Is this is an assignment, obligation, burden, or charge? So these people, the clan, was very much a martial system grounded on the, is this an assignment to provide military, obligation, burden, or charge? So this was kind of an obligation, not an assignment, or a burden or a charge. Charge is when you blame somebody of something and put a charge. So this was an obligation of those people. To obligation means a duty or a commitment that they have to provide military service to their chief, to whom they owed personal allegiance. So it's because they owed them, so it was their duty to provide them military service. Those fighting men were partly dependent on plunder gained from raiding neighboring clans to dash their standard of living. So for standard of living, what is the verb we use? We simply say maintain my standard of living. We won't say continue, follow, or pursue for standard of living. For standard, we use the word maintain your standard, right? So these were the answers. Once again, had, has, or have will be used whenever you want to say something started in the past and it continued till a period of time. So had been means continuously followed or continuously it was in place. Then which, because it's a comma and which is referring to the family, that will come if we continue the sentence without the comma. Made up, because it's simply making up something physically, not preparing for something. And then obligation, because it was their duty, because they owed them something, so it was the duty to provide military service to the chief. And the last is maintaining the standard, because that's the verb we use with the word standard always. No, Jwalanda, home is used for human beings, can be plural as well, that's fine, but not for family as a term, can be used for people. Yes, any other questions in this one? All good with this? Second one, as I said, is which, because they said the clan was ruled by one family, from which means from that family, the chief was drawn. So from, here comes which, that cannot come because we have put a comma. After comma, we cannot put that. Whom cannot come because whom is used for human beings, for people. If we say there were 5 people, all of whom were my friends. So that is how we use whom. It cannot be used for family. And whose again cannot be used apart from human beings, or we say, I think we won't even put comma for whom and whose. So that will be without comma, that will select that those answers. So whom is when you're referring to some people, that there were 5 people, all of whom I know, all of whom I knew. So that is referring to some people that you talked about. All right. So Chandrika, that cannot come if you have used a comma. If it is not a comma, then you can continue with that. That won't be the case, Mayank. They won't give you has been. Otherwise, they'll give you another hint that whether it has stopped or it hasn't stopped. Okay, 2.5 minutes for this 5th question. Yes, post your answers. Okay, good attempt. Let's look at this. This says, after a long absence, hallucinogens began to dash in scientific research. So the sentence makes it clear that they were not there for a period of time. For a long time, they were absent. But now these things, these substances, hallucinogens began to dash in scientific research. So it won't be repeat, come out, reappear, and reveal. So they're not revealing anything. It is reappear because they're coming back. So redoing something means reappearing, coming back. So that is why it is reappear. They began to reappear in the scientific research in the late 1990s. The new studies which have investigated the therapeutic applications of hallucinogens for a variety of conditions have been conducted with greater methodological rigor and attention to patient safety than their predecessors in the 1960s. Most of the studies have been small since hallucinogens are still tightly controlled, and the US government does not recognize any dash medical uses, and dash does not offer any funding for it. So from here it's important, US government does not recognize any dash medical uses. The options are any approved, legitimate, allowable, or valid. So allowable doesn't make sense. Valid or invalid is used in the context when something is right or wrong. So for example, we say this is a valid reason for doing something means right, justifiable, or rather than justifiable, we can say accurate, and invalid is when it is wrong. So here we are not saying right or wrong medical uses, approved or unapproved. The answer is legitimate. Legitimate means something which we cannot prove with logic and justification. So US government believes that there are no uses, no medical uses of hallucinogens which can be proved on the basis of logics and be given justification for that. So that is why it is legitimate. Approved would simply be there are any medical uses which are approved by a body or unapproved by a body. So it's not about approved or unapproved. The way they said is US government does not recognize. It's not, so recognition or not recognition is they don't believe there are any legitimate means any use which can be proved on the basis of facts, on the basis of logics, on the basis of justification is when we use the word legitimate. So US government does not recognize any legitimate means any factful logic based uses of this thing, and dash does not offer. So and does will come because and does means this means and because of the previous thing. So we are concluding the previous statement and saying they don't believe there is any use of it in medicine, and that is why they do not offer any funding for research. So what we have, and accordingly, we are not talking about any way of doing things. However, we are not going opposite, and although cannot come here, and although. So although will come when you have the opposite written after although, but the sentence finishes there. So and thus means because of this reason, they don't offer any funding. But researchers have generally characterized their initial results as very dash. So results are very dash. So what is a word that we use with results is promising results. We don't say hopeful results, favorable or likely. The academic collocation is we say these results are very promising. For example, studies on patients with terminal illnesses found that the mystical experiences induced by psilocybin produced stronger and longer lasting dash in patients' symptoms of depression. So because they are giving positive result, they said the results are promising. So obviously there would be something good happening with patients. So it will be they have produced stronger and longer lasting improvements in the symptoms of patients. So their symptoms have improved, they have become better, and that is why we are saying the results are promising. Okay. So going through it once again, something which was absent is now recoming. So we'll say reappear, legitimate. As I said, there is nothing that can be proved with logic. That is why US does not recognize this, because they don't have justification. And that is why, and thus means because of the previous reason, they don't offer any funding. So the results are promising. And what is promising in the results? That the symptoms of depression are improving in patients. Right? Yes, any doubts? With does, can I use third form? No, does is present tense. Why will we use third form with does? There's no rule like with does we have to use third form. Does is present tense. As government in sentence, word gives sense, but whole look like. No, it's not that. It's that they are not accepting it because they feel that there's no logical use of this drug. When explain when we can use does is when you're concluding something, then we say does. Growth in the symptoms will mean that the symptoms are increasing. Raj Kirtan. So if you'll say growth in the symptoms, that will mean the symptoms have increased. Favorable, because there's a collocation. Promising results is a collocation. We don't say favorable results. We see favorable results has a meaning that the results are good. But what is the word which we generally use when we talk about results of something? We say the results are very promising. That means it holds a lot of opportunity for the future. Means this thing is important and we can research more on its use. Then we say that the initial results are promising. So that is how it is used. All right. Anybody else with any doubt? Okay. It does, we can't use. No, Jagmeet, we cannot, does not include, yeah. No, we won't use. Chandrika, so you have to understand, if approved is the answer, then unapproved should also fit. Are they talking about that US is not accepting something because it is unapproved or approved? No, they are saying US does not recognize any dash use of this particular drug, and that is why they are not giving funding for research. Something which is still in research, how can that be approved or unapproved? Right? So it was that they don't believe it is logical to spend on this research, and that is why they are not giving the funds for that. So it is logical, justifiable use, that means legitimate use. Right? Okay. Okay, so your first reorder question, and you have 2 minutes for this. Please note down hints in every single sentence. Create question for yourself that why are they saying this or what is the meaning of this, and then create a story forward. One sensible person in the class. You won't really say from today that reorders are difficult. Very bad. Can we really start a reorder from example? Can we say for example something, and we can start by giving an example, for example? Okay, so sometimes students ask me that how do we know that this is the first sentence, because the language is very tough and we really don't understand that this is the first sentence or not. Please understand that finding the first sentence is not always to be done in every question. That is one way of finding the answer, to find the first sentence first. If that way is not helping you, don't get stuck to it, because that's only one way, as I said. So your purpose is to solve the question, not to find the first sentence. So try and different methods of solving the question. Here they said the clearances. So you should create the first question, because C is capital means they are referencing to some kind of clearances. So what clearances are they talking about? Are generally regarded as having come in a series of waves whose nature and circumstances varied according to when they happened, where they happened, and who was involved. Advise that his interior land, so his means which is the human being, who is the human being they are talking about. He evicted thousands of families, burning their cottages and establishing large sheep farms. The subsequent disruption of traditional life and dispossession of land that occurred over roughly the next century became known as the Highland clearances. So the answer to the first question has been found here. Which clearances are these? These are the Highland clearances. The full name was the Highland clearances, and they have been referred to as the clearances. So one pair. George Granville Gower, later Duke of Sutherland, for instance, means this is the example. This sentence is an example sentence, but this is the answer to who is he. This is the name of the human being. The first sentence was C, simply based on one pair, full name and half name, and then based on the name of the person and the pronoun he. And I don't want to give any comments any further, but I'm sad to see this. Ashok, what did we discuss 2 minutes back? You asked me, how have I done this? What is all this thing that we have done? So when you're reading the sentences, you should create questions for yourself. The clearances, C is capital, means they are referencing to some type of clearances. So you should create a question. And then he or his, we need to find the name. Third is the Highland clearances, and this is for instance. So we can never start a sentence with an example. So that was the only hint. You should know that D cannot be the first sentence. All good? Second question, 2 minutes, and please open your eyes and do it. Okay, should be done by now. Post your answers. Who is left? Okay, let's look at the hints. Now stop writing and just look at the hints. It measures 55 kilometers by 72 kilometers. So who is this or what is this? And 55 kilometers by 72 kilometers. I hope you understand that kilometers is not a very small inch or centimeter, it's kilometer, right? So 55 kilometers and 72 kilometers. And what is this? Over the past 17 million years or so, successive eruptions have flooded lava over wide stretches of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places, forming a string of comparatively flat calderas linked like beads as the North American plate moves across the stationary hotspot. So one is we have a time period, 17 million years or so. Then we have given an explanation of flooding of lava over some areas as the North American plate moves across the stationary hotspot. So what is this? The stationary hotspot means they're talking about one hotspot, particularly one hotspot, and the means they are referencing to the hotspot. So we should find out where have they introduced this hotspot, only then they can refer to it as the hotspot. The Yellowstone caldera, sometimes known as Yellowstone supervolcano, is a volcanically active region in Yellowstone National Park. So here we have two names and the definition. What is this? This is a region in Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone, like the Hawaii Islands, is believed to lie on top of one of the planet's few dozen hotspots where light, hot, molten mantle rock rises towards the surface. So now here we say there are few dozen hotspots. One of the planet's few dozen hotspots. So this is on the top of one of those hotspots. The Yellowstone hotspot has a long history. So now this is the name of one hotspot, which we talked about here. The Yellowstone hotspot has a long history. So the only sentence which did not refer to anything was C, which was your first sentence, that Yellowstone, known as also this and this, is a volcanically active region in a national park. Am I audible? Okay, sorry. Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's come back. The only sentence which did not refer to anything else was C, where we said that this is a region in Yellowstone National Park, and these many kilometers can only be the measurement of a region. 72 kilometers cannot be one volcano or cannot be one anything. It's all obviously a region, an area of 55 kilometers by 72 kilometers. So it means this region measures this much kilometer. And then you have one explanation of 17 million years ago, and you have one sentence which says a long history. So long history will come first and then you will explain the history. But before that, all of the sentences are using the hotspot. So which is the general one where they say many hotspots. So Yellowstone is believed to lie on top of one of the few dozen hotspots, means out of many, this lies at the top. And then the name of it is the Yellowstone hotspot, which has a long history. And what is the history? From 17 million years or so, there have been successive eruptions and flooded lava over all those areas, moves across the stationary hotspot. The means this particular one which we just talked about, the Yellowstone hotspot. Got it? So this question makes it very clear that how important it is and the. They make all the difference in your selection. And at times you have to apply your brain as well. 55 kilometers, 72 kilometers, what can this be? This will be an area, obviously, by these many kilometers. So some sort of interpretation when you read, okay, it measures, so it's something we have to find out, and it's in kilometers, so it should be something like a big area, right? Any doubts in this question, anyone? So E cannot come before D because D is the one which is telling us that there are few dozen hotspots and this lie on the top. Only then you will name that. When you have already named, then how will you say this lies on one of the many? First you'll say it lies on one of the many and then you will give its name is this. And moreover, this sentence, the Yellowstone hotspot, has a long history. Once you say this, you have no point to go back and again explain where is it situated, because this sentence should talk about the history after that. All right. Few dozen hotspots, Kashif, they say. Yellowstone, you should read it as, they here said, Yellowstone lie on top of one of the few dozen hotspots. So here we say it lies on one of the many and its name is the Yellowstone hotspot. So which is general? It is on one of the many and then one. What is exactly its name? Then it will come further. Because it's one and they are many. So you take one out of many, not many out of one. All right. Okay, the next one. 2 minutes for this. Yes, anybody left to post the answer? Okay, look at the hints. So here they said Vesta, like Earth, is composed of rock in its crust and mantle, and it has an iron core. So here we are talking about composition. What is it composed of? And also we say it has an iron. So its crust and mantle is made up of core, made up of rock, and its core is made up of iron. It has an iron core. With a diameter of about 330 miles, it orbits the sun between the planets Mars and Jupiter. So with the diameter means we are talking about the size of it. How many miles is its size? Because of its large size and because Vesta has a crust, mantle, and core. So before this sentence, we have already talked about the size and we have already talked about crust, mantle, core. Because of two reasons, it is considered a planetesimal. The asteroid Vesta is the second largest asteroid in our solar system. So here we come to know what is Vesta. It is an asteroid. This is the first sentence. So in here we were talking about largest, means we are talking about size. So we have one more sentence which talks about size, that should come second because we are on the same topic. Second largest, and what or how much large is it? It is about 330 miles. Right, two things. And then here we introduce that it has crust, mantle, and it has an iron core. And then we'll say because of size and because it has a crust, mantle, and core, it is called planetesimal. Got it? So just which sentence is referencing and which sentence is introducing was important, and with what is the context. So here we were talking about largest, means we were talking about size. In this sentence also we are talking about what is the size, so they will come together. And after that we'll say the composition, and in the end we'll put together both of the things, the size as well as the composition, which we have already talked about, and then we'll conclude that it is called planetesimal. Any doubts, anyone? Good attempt, Sahil. And here you have question number 4, and you have 2 minutes for this. Okay, so this is one of the questions which we have discussed in the video for reorders, that whenever you have questions about researches, they're very easy because you only and only have to focus on the verbs, because they go in a chronological order. Obviously, first they plan the research and then they do something and then they find something and then is the overall result of the research. So they always go in the same pattern. Let's see what are the verbs here. They found. It's important that all birds exploited wind and uplift to reduce energy cost during flight, even adjusting their migratory routes to benefit from the best atmospheric conditions. So in these kind of questions, it's not important what is found. It is just important that which is the conclusion, which is the process, which is the introduction. So the found word is the most important here. Researchers at this institute of this and this in Germany have identified how large land birds fly non-stop for hundreds of kilometers over the open ocean without taking a break for food or rest. This is your topic. This is the research that they are conducting. And using GPS tracking technology, the team monitored. So what has the team done? This was what they did. They monitored the global migration of 5 species of large land birds that complete long sea crossings. This is the most wide-ranging study of sea crossing behavior yet and reveals the important role of atmosphere. So this is the revelation, means kind of what was the conclusion. So it reveals the important role of atmosphere in facilitating migration over the open sea for many terrestrial birds. So your first sentence was B. What is the research? How the research was done? What did they do in the research? They monitored. What did they find out in the research? They found out this thing. And overall, what the research revealed, or what was the result, or what came out as a conclusion was, it reveals the most important role of atmosphere in facilitating migration over the open sea for many terrestrial birds. And a lot of you have done it good. Very good. Done it correct. Very good. Still any questions, anybody? D cannot come after A, Neha. I just said that whenever you conclude the research, it comes at the end. Rekha, you should use verbs in this. You have to follow a chronological order. What is the research? How is the research done? What did they find out of the research? And what is the overall conclusion of the research? So it goes in an order. Okay. Firstly, what is the research? What did they do in the research? What is the process followed? What is the found? What did they find in the research? And what is the conclusion of the research? Simply like we do researches, guys. What do? We first plan, we perform, then we get the result, and then we conclude it. So whenever we do researches, first we plan that what will we do, then we do it. Whatever we have planned, we do it, we put it into action. And then, for example, in researches, we are researching something on 100 people. So we tell those 100 people to perform like this: sleep at 3 a.m. or whatever, eat fruits only in a day, only take liquid diet. So whatever the research is, we tell them to do that thing. And then we ask them, how did you feel? So that is your findings of the research. Once you take all the findings from everybody, then you conclude whatever your overall purpose was to find out, whatever you wanted to find out, then you find that thing out of that and you conclude that, okay, this is the result. So this is how researches are done. All right, the last question for reorders. 2 minutes for this as well. Sometimes to select the answers, you have to go on how you generally will place these two things, like which is a general one and which is more specific, like we do. So like AC or CA is based on which is more general, which is more specific. Like how will you say that this room is not for general public. It can only be used by the presidents. So we'll say like this, no, it is not for everybody. It is only for presidents. So first we'll generalize and then we'll give the specific thing of that. The same way it was here. So all of you have done the first one correct. B is your first answer, first sentence, and D is your second one. After that comes A, because you'll say the area is not accessible to the general public and is under 24-hour surveillance. The only use of the installation is as a flight testing facility. So first, a general sentence, it's under not accessible to public, is under 24-hour surveillance, and the only purpose you can use it for is testing facility. So those who have put CA, I believe they must have put it looking at the installation, but it's the same. The installation or the area holds equal relevance. So you have to go with the context, that which context is general and which is more specific, because you always flow in from general to specific to more specific to more specific. So you cannot give a specific thing and then generalize. You always generalize first and then give the specification. All right. Got it, Jagmeet? So generalizations first and specification second. Okay, good. No problem. So here goes your first question for reading blanks, and you have 2 minutes to do this. Yes, post your answers. Good time management, Jashanpreet. Good attempt. Very good. Okay, so all of you have done it correct as far as I can see here. The World Health Organization is responsible for declaring a pandemic, means they have the duty to declare it. WHO monitors disease activity on a global scale dash a network of centers. So how do they monitor? They monitor through a network of, means their sources or their means of monitoring are, they have a lot of centers located in countries worldwide and has a pandemic preparedness plan that consists of 6 phases of pandemic alert. Phase 1 represents the lowest level of alert and usually dash that a new emerged. So what do? They indicate. So phase 1 indicates what does it indicate? It indicates that a newly emerged or previously existing virus is circulating dash animals. So it is among, because there will be so many animals with low risk of transmission to humans. Phase 6 is declared when an outbreak is characterized by globally dash. So when it is spread in all the countries, it is spread throughout the globe. That means globally widespread. Then phase 6 is declared. Right? It was well understood actually, but a good attempt, all of you. Just try that in these kind of questions. If you can manage your time even better, that would be great for you. Still any doubts, anybody? All good. Okay. So let's move on to number 2, and this is your second question. Okay, a good attempt again. Accomplish the borders. What is the meaning of accomplish the borders? Okay, what is this? It is easy enough to agree that human beings all around the world have certain basic requirements that must be dashed. So with be comes third form of verb. Let's look at the third forms. We have remained, persisted, and fulfilled. So for requirements, we'll say there are requirements that need to be fulfilled in order to ensure survival, to ensure their individual and collective well-being. However, history has shown us that it is not so easy to form societies or communities that fulfill these requirements. So it was given here for all members. The fight over human and civil rights has dashed for hundreds of years. So with has, have, had comes third form of verb. So we have two options left now. The fight has remained or the fight has persisted. The meaning of persisted is continued. So here the answer will be the fight has continued to exist for hundreds of years. So that is why it will be persisted. The fight has continued to exist for hundreds of years and remains alive today, both dash the borders and internationally. So it was simply both inside of the borders and outside. So inside of the borders will mean within the borders and outside will mean international scale. It has led to large scale social dash and reforms concerning issues. So reforms is plural. We need plural here. Large scale social movements is the only plural noun that we have. Large scale social movements and reforms about the issues of this and this and this. Okay, any confusions, anybody? Remained, so we won't say the fights has remained. Fights has continued for years. When we say the fights has remained for years, remained is used in two sense. One is the remainder thing, what was left, that is remained. And other remained is when you talk about place, it remained there. That is for a point of time, not for a period of time. Black V2 and V3. What is black V2 or V3? And in us why inward doesn't come. First blank with B comes V3. Third form of verb comes with B. And last one is inward. Inward is when something is coming towards inside, then we say inward. Or outward is going outside of something, then we say outward. So here we say within means inside, not coming or going. Inside means in there. That is within, and international means outside the borders. Inward and outward means movement. All right. So here you have your third question and you have 2 minutes. Done. Let's look at the answers. Social media dash of sites like Facebook. So this just comprises of Twitter and Instagram. With social media, users can create profiles in which they use to share content with friends. The content can be anything from normal updates to images and videos. The negative effects of social media are seen in many ways, most of which includes the dangers of social media dash and cyberbullying. So the dangers of social media addiction, because it's a bad thing. So it's dangerous to have social media addiction and cyberbullying. Social media addiction is defined as spending dash time on social media. So when we spend excessive time, that is more than required. Some of you have put uncontrolled. What do you mean by uncontrolled time? Even if I'm spending 10 hours or 12 hours, that cannot be called uncontrolled. It is in my control. I can stop it. I can log out of it. So uncontrolled would be something which is not in your control, and excessive is more than required. So when we get addicted is when we start spending more than required time on social media. That is excessive time. Or having an emotional dependence on social media despite its dash. So we depend on it despite its consequences, means drawbacks or kind of negative outcomes. Consequences of spending too much time on social media sites are narcissism, anxiety, and depression. The causes of these consequences are dashed to both social media site and the user's behavior. So attributed to is used when you want to say caused by, but since by is not written there and it is to, so when you can't use caused by, you can say attributed to. So these consequences are caused by the social media site as well as the behavior of the user. These two things are responsible for the consequences. Right? Any questions? First, not includes. With includes, you don't use of, Dhruv. So with includes, of is not required. You say social media includes sites like this and this. All good. Fifth one is attributed. Attributed to means caused by. All right. Okay, moving ahead to number 4. 2 minutes for this. Very good. Anybody left to post the answer? So this one says the tactics dashed by each separate army on each separate occasion depend upon circumstances. So the tactics adopted. Tactics is like techniques kind of thing that the armies use when they are fighting with an enemy. So means adopted by them. The tactics or the techniques used by them would depend upon circumstances like this and this. Dash, while circumstances and purposes vary, the fundamental principles of tactics are eternal, like those of strategy. So here they wanted to say, however, means yes, it depends upon a lot of things. So you can say, however, the fundamental principles are eternal, means they are the same, they are not changed every time. So that is why however comes, because in a way we wanted to present contrast to what we said. That is why we said, however, the fundamental principles of the tactics, like that of strategy, they are eternal, like they are the same. At bottom, they derived from the fact that in war, two forces, each of which is free to dash its independent will. So we have two words with two, first form of verb, use or exercise. What is the difference between them? Exercise also means to use something, but exercise is more used with abstract things, whereas use is used with physical things. For example, exercise is used with control. Control is exercised. With power, power is exercised. And here we have independent will. Will means their own wishes, kind of, to be very plain. So it will be exercise here because we want to say use, but still the thing is not physical, it's abstract. So we'll use exercise. And for use, for example, we'll say use the mobile phone to make a call. We won't say exercise the mobile phone. So that is the difference. I hope it makes sense now. So they are free to use their will. So we'll say exercise their will because it is abstract. Meet in an attempt to destroy each other while dash attempting to avoid being destroyed. So it was meaningful. You have to attempt the enemy while at the same time you have to defend yourself. So while at the same time you have to attempt to avoid being destroyed. To achieve this double aim, they can either rely on force or skill, assuming the two sides to be approximately equal. So we will not read this to this. We'll say, assuming the two sides to be approximately equal, a dash of both of these things is necessary. So a combination of both of these things, because it just makes sense. You have to combine both the strategies, and then it is necessary to combine both the strategies and use them. So for the first one, Ashna, if we want to use used there, we'll have to say it as used by, the tactics used by. We cannot put use there. Can you please explain blank number 4? So blank number 4 was based on context. Whenever there is a fight, the army has to do two things. One, they have to destroy the enemy, and at the same time, they have to defend themselves. It was the same thing, that you have to attempt to destroy each other while at the same time they have to attempt to avoid being destroyed. So it was based on the context simply. And we have the last question for today, number 5. 2 minutes for this. always see what modal the sentence is using. Most of the times you should be using the same. So here they say you may picture sand and dunes when you dash off a desert. So all of you are correct, saying when you think of a desert, we think of sand and dunes everywhere. But deserts can occur in colder areas too. There are cold and frigid deserts also, which they have given the examples of. They frequently dip below freezing during the colder months of the year. In addition, one dash large desert exists. So what comes here is one, if we read the sentence, it is complete. One large desert exists. So we have to say how much large it is. So we need an adverb. So it would be one extremely with ly. One extremely large desert exists whose sands are actually made of water. It dashed the whole of Antarctica. We had two options. It stretches or it spans. Stretches is used in two ways. One is stretches over, used with the preposition over. Another one is it stretches from and to. So here we don't have over, we don't even have from. So it will be spans, and the meaning of spans is extends across. So it will be it extends across the whole of Antarctica, means in a way it covers the whole of Antarctica. Dashed coastal regions receive about 7.9 inches of precipitation. So we'll follow the sentence, the way of writing. So we will select whose coastal regions receive this much of precipitation per year, while its interior receives less than this much. And then they say for many people, the Sahara, which spans some this million square miles, is the world's largest desert. However, one could certainly argue that a 5.5 million square miles dash be considered, which is miles Antarctica, dash be considered. So it should be Antarctica could be considered, because it's just a possibility. We are not giving a suggestion, we are giving a possibility that it is possible that this could be considered the world's largest technical desert. Okay, so this is all. Spans means extends across, means it covers. Yeah, it is given the context as well, but still stretches is used when you want to say stretches over or stretches from and to. And spans means extends across. Now, should is when you're giving suggestion that this should be done. But could is that when you're saying this is a possibility that this can be the case. But this is just about argument, no? They haven't said that this thing. They said one, where is that from? For many people, Sahara is the in 3.32 million square miles is the world's largest desert. However, one could argue. So we say that is the one, but we can argue on this, that this is a possibility that maybe this one is the world's largest technical desert. Whom cannot come? How can you use whom here? It's not about one can certainly write it down. They say one can certainly argue. So argue means you can present this as an argument that this Antarctica could be considered, that there's a possibility that this could be considered as the world's largest technical desert. Whom won't be used. You just said Antarctica, so you will read this as, however, one could certainly argue that at 5.5 million square miles, Antarctica whom be considered. What sense does it make? You just say Antarctica whom be considered. So just said Antarctica, no comma, nothing after that. Okay, whom is when you're referencing to something which you mentioned, let's say in the previous sentence or previous part of the sentence. This is just the previous word and there's not even a comma. So should is when you give suggestions. For example, I generally say that you should do 30 questions of reading and writing blanks. That's a suggestion I am giving. And if I say you could actually do more than that, so that is if there's a possibility, then you can do. That's not a suggestion, that's kind of a possibility. Or this could come in the exam. Now, okay, this is easy. If I say this should come in the exam means it is my suggestion that this should come, and this could come in the exam means there is a possibility that this can be the case. Stretches can be used, Bhavin, in two ways. One, when you have the preposition over, stretches over, or when it says stretches from. Without these two words, you cannot put stretches. Right? Done with this one? Any further questions? Okay, so these were all the questions that we had to do today. And yes, okay, sorry. So these were all the questions for today. Those who do not have any doubts or any queries or do not have anything to ask or talk about, yes, you're free to leave. I'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. for the next session. Please do keep practicing and try to use more of the hints, more of the strategies, more of the tips that we discuss in these classes in your practice things. Only then it will make a difference. Okay. And those who are going, good night. See you tomorrow.